We're counting down the 13 neighbor-made Halloween treats you almost couldn't escape each October. From home kitchens where autumn scents drifted through open windows to porches that became neighborhood legends, these entries trace the evolution from sticky homemade sweets to iconic party snacks and a few jaw-dropping surprises you might have forgotten. Which memory maker ranks number 1? And how did changing times push these classics off the map? Join this nostalgic ranking as we revisit the treats that once filled your pillowcase and shaped your entire trick-or-treat route, starting with number 13, a tradition where getting sticky fingers was half the fun. Number 13, taffy pulls transformed the kitchen into a stage for a sticky spectacle. Children and adults gathered around a buttered slab, each pair of hands stretching hot, glossy ropes of homemade taffy until the candy cooled and shone. The recipe was simple: sugar, water, a dash of vinegar for snap. But the real magic came from teamwork and laughter. In the late 19th century, newspapers described Halloween taffy pulls as the highlight of the night, with neighbors comparing technique and children boasting about who could pull longest without letting go. Unlike the wrapped candies that would later fill treat bags, these parties made the making just as memorable as the eating. Today, the tradition survives in living history museums and the occasional vintage blog, but for most, the memory of buttered fingers and the sweet smell of molasses is all that remains. Did your family ever host a kitchen taffy pull? Number 12. Halloween in Canada comes wrapped in orange and black. Molasses taffy, once pulled by hand in kitchen parties, found its mass-produced twin when Kerrs began churning out Halloween kisses in the late 1940s. Each chewy piece arrives in a waxy wrapper, stamped with witches and jack-o'-lanterns, unmistakable even in a dark treat bag. Every October, Kerrs factories in Toronto ramp up for the season, hiring extra hands just to meet demand. Proof that, love them or not, these candies still define the holiday north of the border. The taste divides families. Some cherish the deep, smoky sweetness, while others leave them for last or forever. Yet the ritual endures, with annual debates and nostalgia threads lighting up Canadian forums. Did your neighbors hand out a fistful, or did you learn to spot the house that always supported local? Love them or leave them, Halloween kisses are pure Canadian memory. Number 11, peanut brittle appeared in wax paper packets. Thin, amber shards that snapped like glass and left a trail of crumbs in every treat bag. Making brittle at home was a badge of skill, especially in the South and Midwest, where neighbors quietly competed to see who could pour it thinnest across a buttered sheet pan. The secret was baking soda, added at the last second to aerate the molten sugar and create that signature honeycomb texture. In the 1950s through the 1970s, peanut brittle was both a practical and showy neighbor gift. Affordable yet demanding close attention to temperature and timing. Some households swapped peanuts for pecans or almonds, but every batch sparked debate about whether it should shatter with a tap or threaten a dental bill. Today, peanut brittle survives mostly at fall bake sales and holiday bazaars, a rare find in modern Halloween bags. Who in your neighborhood made the thinnest brittle? Number 10, plain cake donuts were the heart of indoor Halloween gatherings from the 1930s through the 1950s. Served warm on napkins alongside pitchers of cider, these fried rings appeared on every table at church socials and PTA parties. Cookbooks from the era called for simple batters: flour, eggs, a splash of buttermilk, dropped into hot oil and dusted with sugar while still steaming. For many, Halloween meant donut eating contests, strings hung from rafters and sticky fingers grasping for seconds. The tradition thrived because donuts could be made in big batches, shared among neighbors, and enjoyed right away, long before wrapped candies took over. As trick-or-treating shifted outdoors and food safety rules tightened, the communal donut faded from porch steps. But nostalgia keeps the recipe alive at vintage-themed parties. Did your church hall ever fill with the scent of frying donuts and laughter on Halloween night? Number 9. The aroma of apple cider donuts signaled October long before you saw the bakery case. These cake-style rings, dusted with cinnamon sugar and served warm, became the signature of orchard visits and roadside stands across the Northeast and Midwest. Unlike the donuts fried for church halls, cider donuts owe their rise to the post-war boom in orchard tourism, when families piled into cars for apple picking and left with a sack of fresh, spiced donuts made with cider in the batter. By the 1970s, every fall meant a line at the farm stand, the scent of sweet apples and frying dough drifting across the parking lot. Rarely did these treats make it into a trick-or-treat bag. They were meant to be eaten hot, with sticky fingers and cider to wash them down. Which porch in your memory smelled just like a cider mill on Halloween night? Number 8. Apples, nuts, and harvest treats once filled Halloween bags with the taste of October itself. Whole apples with their waxy shine, small paper cones of salted peanuts, and the occasional cup of fresh cider handed out on the porch. These were the default offerings in the era before candy bars took over. In the 1930s through the early 1950s, agricultural extension offices and women's magazines promoted apples and nuts as thrifty, wholesome handouts, a way to celebrate the harvest and stretch the family budget. Rural diaries and local newsletters described neighbors taping nickels to apples, a small fortune for a child, enough for a couple of pixie sticks at the corner store. These treats signaled a time when nutrition and abundance mattered as much as sugar, and every house on the block might hand out something grown or gathered close to home. As Halloween shifted toward packaged sweets and urban legends about tampered fruit took hold, apples and nuts faded from doorsteps. Today, cider and donuts still mark the season at orchard events, but the memory of a coin-taped apple lingers in neighborhood lore. Did you ever find a shiny nickel hidden under the stem of your Halloween apple? Number 7. Fudge squares and bar cookies arrived in wax paper bundles. 2-bite portions tucked into treat bags or stacked on party trays beside pitchers of cider, chocolate fudge, peanut butter bars, pumpkin blondies. Each recipe carried a family signature, often clipped from a community cookbook or scribbled in the margin by a neighbor. In the 1930s through the 1950s, these bars were the mark of a well-supplied Halloween table, especially at home parties where cider and cookies meant the festivities had begun. The variety was staggering. Some households favored dense, cocoa-rich fudge, while others leaned into spiced pumpkin or chewy, oat-topped squares. Unlike the single-flavor candies that would later take over, bar cookies celebrated the creativity and thrift of home bakers who could stretch a pan to feed a crowd. Today, these recipes surface in annual nostalgia guides and at vintage-themed gatherings, a reminder of the era when a neighbor's pumpkin bar could brighten your whole haul. Which bar cookie was your favorite trade on Halloween night? Number 6. Rice Krispies Treats. Squares brought a new kind of excitement to the Halloween haul. Each wax paper wrapped square, cut straight from a sheet pan, stood out for its glossy marshmallow sheen and crisp, airy bite. The recipe, 5 or 6 cups of puffed rice cereal, a mound of mini marshmallows, and a pat of butter, was invented in 1939 by Mildred Day, a home economist at Kellogg's. By the 1950s, the company promoted these treats in PTA newsletters and women's magazines, encouraging parents to make big batches for school fundraisers and neighborhood parties. Their sticky simplicity made them perfect for trading at lunch tables, and the corner pieces, thicker, chewier, and sometimes a bit caramelized, became coveted currency among kids. Debates over the ideal marshmallow to cereal ratio still pop up on recipe blogs every fall, a sign that the old-school method holds its place in family kitchens. Did you ever angle for a corner piece, or was your strategy to grab the biggest square in the pile? Number 5. Caramel corn arrived in crisp paper sacks, each handful sticky with golden syrup and sometimes studded with roasted peanuts for extra crunch. Unlike the soft, spherical popcorn balls, caramel corn offered a brittle snap and a glossy sheen. the kind you'd spot at county fairs or on party trays in the 1950s. The roots of this treat stretch back to the late 19th century, when Cracker Jack's ads promised a prize in every box and recipes for candied popcorn began circulating in women's magazines. By Halloween night, it was the neighbor's answer to feeding a crowd. One batch could fill dozens of bags, stretching a little sugar and a lot of popcorn into a feast for the whole block. Peanuts made it feel like the grown-up version, a nod to carnival nights and autumn parades. Today, caramel corn survives at bake sales and fairs, but the memory of that neighbor who added just the right amount of nuts lingers. Which house on your street gave out the best caramel corn? Number 4. Cinnamon toothpicks turned the schoolyard into a secret marketplace. These tiny sticks, soaked in fiery cinnamon oil, traveled in wax paper bundles or tucked envelopes, passed hand to hand with a sly grin. For older kids, they were a dare and a badge. Atomic picks that could leave your lips tingling, your eyes watering, and your teacher glaring. By the mid-1970s, the fad had spread from Seattle to Cleveland, prompting school memos warning of burned mouths and distraction, and at least one official ban, after a minor mouth burn, made the Journal of School Health. Still, the thrill was part of the appeal, a cheap, defiant burst of heat you could buy from a friend's backpack for a nickel. Unlike the sticky, sweet treats that filled most bags, cinnamon toothpicks were a spicy handshake between classmates, DIY, mischievous, and gone before the next bell. Who on your block was the atomic pick dealer, and did you ever get caught with a red tongue in class? Number 3. Caramel apples were the porch prize that made you pause and strategize. Each apple arrived on a wooden stick, dipped in a thick, glossy layer of caramel that sometimes glistened with chopped nuts or rainbow sprinkles. In the 1950s, Kraft transformed this treat from a rare homemade effort into a Halloween mainstay, selling caramel apple kits in grocery stores and advertising them as the all-American fall dessert. These apples stood out in any hall, not just for their size, but for their sense of occasion. Unlike the sticky handfuls of caramel corn or the neat squares of fudge, a caramel apple required planning. Some kids wrapped them back up to eat at home, while others tried to nibble around the caramel without losing a tooth or making a mess. The treat's connection to orchard fairs and autumn festivals only added to its mystique, but over time, the cost, the mess, and the worry over unwrapped foods pushed caramel apples out of most treat bags. Today, they're a staple at apple orchards and fall events, but the memory of that one neighbor who handed out caramel apples, still warm, still perfect, lingers long after. What was your secret for eating one without caramel on your chin? Number 2, wax paper wrapped homemade caramels were the quiet pride of many a neighbor's kitchen. Each soft, buttery square was twisted tight in wax paper, sometimes with a sprinkle of salt, a dusting of chopped nuts, or just the faintest sheen of butter showing through. The ritual began with a heavy saucepan and a candy thermometer, coaxing sugar and cream to the soft ball stage, then pouring the molten caramel into a buttered pan to cool before slicing and wrapping. By the 1960s and 70s, caramels were a staple in home economics classes and PTA newsletters, with Better Homes and Gardens declaring them a perfect holiday project. Every block seemed to have someone who wrapped caramels so precisely you could almost smell the vanilla through the paper. But in October 1982, everything changed. The Tylenol tampering crisis, unrelated to Halloween candy, sparked a wave of fear that swept through neighborhoods. PTA bulletins and police advisories urged parents to reject homemade treats, and the wax paper caramel, once a sign of neighborly trust, faded almost overnight. Sociologist Joel Best found no evidence of poisoned Halloween candy from strangers, yet the damage was done. By the mid-1980s, homemade caramels were mostly reserved for family or close friends, replaced in treat bags by factory-sealed minis. Still, each fall, vintage recipes and memory threads resurface, with bakers chasing that perfect texture and the old skill of twisting wax paper just so. Did anyone on your street wrap their caramels so neatly you could spot them blindfolded? And finally, in first place, the popcorn ball stands as the legend every trick-or-treater hoped for. Wrapped in crinkling cellophane, sometimes tied with a green ribbon or a twist of yarn, each ball was a promise you could spot through the fabric of your pillowcase. Some houses became famous for them, like the Rizzo family in Akron, who rolled nearly 200 popcorn balls each October, their front porch light flickering as a signal for the rush to begin. The scent of hot syrup and butter drifted down the block, and the crackle of each ball in your hands was as much a part of Halloween as any costume. Popcorn balls were celebrated in cookbooks as early as 1861, but it was the post-war boom and the advice of mid-century women's magazines that cemented them as a Halloween staple. Brands like Jolly Time and Pillsbury ran ads urging families to pop and roll, promising a treat that stretched a tight grocery budget to feed a whole street. Recipes called for a mountain of popcorn, sometimes studded with peanuts, sometimes dyed orange or green, and the process became a neighborhood ritual with parents and children working side by side. The economics were simple. A few cents worth of corn and sugar yielded dozens of treats, making it possible for one house to become a Halloween destination. Even after the rise of safety fears and the shift to pre-wrapped candy, stories of the popcorn ball house linger. Vintage recipes resurface every October, and memory threads online still debate who tied the best ribbon or handed them out warm. Who set the standard on your block? Was it the size, the flavor, or the unmistakable crackle through cellophane that made their popcorn balls the stuff of legend? Across all 13 entries, our countdown revealed how homemade Halloween treats shaped neighborhood legends and personal memories long before fun-size wrappers took over. From the rare, labor-intensive taffy pulls of the 1800s to the iconic cellophane-wrapped popcorn ball, the clear winner for most remembered neighbor treat, each item told a story of community, seasonal ritual, and changing times. A consistent pattern emerged. Treats were homemade, often shared warm, and signaled by porch lights or word of mouth. The shift from apples and harvest nuts to fudge squares and caramel corn mirrors, the broader move from rural traditions to post-war convenience. Surprisingly, safety scares like the Tylenol crisis abruptly ended the era of wax paper caramels, marking a turning point in what neighbors dared to share. These treats weren't just snacks, they were social currency, mapping each street by its signature flavor. In the end, this list reminds us that Halloween was once defined by neighborly trust and homemade pride, a tradition now mostly nostalgic but still echoed in fall festivals and family kitchens.